welcome to this preview of the Banker's Top 1000 World Bank Rankings for 2013. This is a very special year for the Top 1000 because for the first time ever, a Chinese bank is in the #1 position. For some years now, the Chinese banks have been gathering strength in the ranking, and last year, all 4 of the large state-owned banks gained places in the top 10. This was an impressive achievement in itself. But now Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, or ICBC as it's most usually known, has gone one step further by dislodging Bank of America from the top spot. ICBC grew both its capital and profits by 14% over the past year, and it is now the #1 bank in the world by Tier 1 capital, that's the main measure of the Top 1000 ranking, as well as by profits, by assets, by deposits, and by market capitalization. I'll give you some more details about the Chinese bank's growth story in just a few moments, as well as my reflections on banks from other regions. But first of all, let's look at this year's top 10 table. The Banker's Top 1000 ranking is based on Tier 1 capital, which we consider as the best measure of a bank's strength. Asset size does not give such a good guide, as no one can be sure of the quality of the assets, and profits, as we all know, can be volatile. On this basis, ICBC is in first place with $160 billion of capital, enabling it to beat second place JP Morgan to the top spot by $644 million worth of capital. Meanwhile, last year's #1, Bank of America, has slipped to #3, recording a 2.37% drop in capital. There's another surprise move in this year's Top 1000. China Construction Bank, placed last year at #6, has moved above Citigroup to take over the 5th spot. Indeed, this year's ranking is very much a story of the Chinese banks outmaneuvering the large American banks. Both countries have 4 players in the top 10, with the other 2 spaces held by the UK's HSBC at #4 and Japan's Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group at #7. But is it all onwards and upwards for Chinese banks from here on, or could they yet run into headwinds? The Banker magazine has been doing bank rankings for more than 40 years. Back in 1990, the ranking was dominated by Japanese banks. 6 of the top 10 banks were Japanese, including all of the top 3. But then the Japanese economic miracle collapsed and its bank's global stature was diminished. Could the same thing happen in China? There are certainly concerns about the health of the Chinese financial system and the growth of off-balance sheet lending. Yet at the same time, Chinese banks are well capitalized, they have conservative loan-to-deposit ratios and low levels of non-performing loans. The Banker database, from which the Top 1000 ranking is taken, contains a wealth of information on all the banks in the listing. Apart from China's progress, what's the other big news? Unfortunately for Spanish banks, they're in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Spanish banks lost a total of $73 billion last year, accounting for nearly 5% of Spanish GDP. In the table now showing, we list the top 10 highest bank losses in absolute numbers. And as you will see, Spanish banks are in 1st, 2nd and 3rd place, and there are 6 Spanish banks overall. And then if we expand the list to the top 25 highest losses, the number of Spanish banks rises to 9. And by the way, only one of the banks in that table is non-European, showing just how much the economic problems in Europe continue to trouble the banks. Before leaving Spain, let's just say a word or two about the stronger Spanish banks. While facing challenging times, Santander, for example, remains in 14th place, and BBVA has only slipped 2 places to 31, while at the same time increasing its capital by 5.81%. By increasing its capital by 43%, Banco Sabadell is one of Europe's fastest movers, rising from number 141 to 113th place. In the UK, banking remains a story of 2 halves. Standard Chartered's the only major British bank to improve its performance. Its profits increased by 3% and it edged up 1 place in the ranking to 33rd. HSBC, Barclays, RBS and Lloyds all held on to their places in Tier 1 capital terms, but as the next table shows, their profit performance was very mixed. Those of HSBC and Barclays fell, while Lloyds and RBS continued to make losses. This year we made an interesting comparison between the profits of all the UK banks and the total profits of French banks. Before the crisis in 2008, UK banks were making double the profits of French banks. But since the crisis, the French banks have generally done better. BNP Paribas in particular now has a return on capital of nearly 14%, while many UK banks are struggling to get themselves into double figures. As banking as a leading UK industry, to be beaten by the French is a sad reflection of the state of British banking. The Banker's Top 1000 World Banks contains a wealth of information with breakdowns by country and by region, by return on capital, by loan to deposit, by non-performing loans and cost-to-income ratios, amongst many other measures. The rankings appear in the July issue, along with commentary from the Banker's team of editors on what the rankings mean in terms of banking trends. Bankers from around the globe will be studying their form in the Banker's Top 1000 rankings. Anyone wishing to order a copy of the July issue can do so at our website. The Banker's Top 1000 ranking is taken from the Banker database, which contains a wider range of data on many more banks than appear in the published ranking. Anyone wishing to subscribe to the full database can do so at thebankerdatabase.com. And for those who would like to see what the database can provide, we're offering a free 14-day trial using the access code that appears at the end of this video. As last year, we're also offering the free trial by way of a downloadable app. So we hope you enjoy perusing the Banker's Top 1000 World Banks. Whichever way you access it, it remains one of the world's leading sources of banking information and is used by banks around the world for picking counterparties and correspondence. In these turbulent times, can you really afford to be without it?